sound of wind whistling through empty streets, a distant, faint scream. The town of Hollow Creek was dying, a slow, agonizing death that began each night, precisely at 3:07 a.m. It started with the screams, echoing through streets that had long forgotten the sound of footsteps. Then the power grid would surrender, plunging the town into a suffocating darkness. Radios, once sources of comfort, would crackle with hostile static. Lights would flicker, teasing residents with a final desperate pulse before dying. And in the chilling silence that followed, from somewhere inside every home, a toy would giggle. Down in the cold, sterile basement of the police station, Detective Mason's badge lay discarded on an evidence table. It reflected the dim emergency lights sitting beside the shattered, bagged remains of the Labubu Doll. But these were no ordinary shards. They vibrated, a low hum that seemed to sync with the frantic beat of a human heart, a faint, rhythmic pulsing. Officer Riley, young and still clinging to the frayed edges of skepticism, leaned in, his breath fogging the plastic evidence bag. He whispered to no one in particular, Why does it sound like it's breathing?" As the words left his lips, the impossible happened. The shards began to move. They slid and clicked, reassembling with unnatural speed, piece by jagged piece, until the doll's porcelain face was whole again. Its painted eyes, once lifeless, snapped open, fixing on Riley with an ancient, malevolent intelligence. A childlike voice, warped and distorted, echoed in the confined space. "It's time to play." Miles across town, Father Jonas, a man whose hands had once commanded demons and sanctified haunted relics, felt a familiar, icy dread crawl up his spine. Something ancient and powerful was stirring. He reached for his Bible, its worn leather a familiar comfort, and flipped it open. But the sacred words were gone. The pages turned a deep obsidian black before his very eyes. The holy verses twisted and writhed, morphing into grotesque, unfamiliar symbols. And beneath the chaos, a single phrase burned through the paper, glowing like a hot ember. "The hour belongs to her." Just then, the church bells tolled, a deafening, frantic ringing. But Jonas knew the ropes had been cut years ago. A new sound joined the cacophony, whispers seeping from the dark confines of the confession box. The dolls, the ones confiscated and stored away, were speaking. They were whispering names, and among them, he heard his own. Exactly at 3:07 a.m., the clock struck the witching hour and the possession hour began. In an instant, every streetlight in Hollow Creek exploded in a shower of glass and sparks. The great clock in the town square froze, its hands locked at the cursed minute. And then the people. One by one, they stopped. A woman reaching for a glass, a man tying his shoe, a child mid-laugh, all frozen like statues. Their heads began to twitch, spasming in unnatural, broken angles like marionettes with their strings violently yanked. Their eyes, wide with a terror they could no longer express, rolled back until only the whites were visible. Their lips parted, moving in unison, but it was not their voices that emerged. It was a single, high-pitched, mocking voice, Labubu's voice. "You broke her," it chimed through 1,000 mouths. "Now she'll break you." As if on cue, every window in Hollow Creek shattered simultaneously. And in every shard of glass, every reflective surface, from puddles on the street to the screens of dead phones, only one face stared back, the doll's triumphant porcelain grin. Father Jonas, his faith his only shield, arrived at the old burned-out chapel on the hill. He clutched a vial of holy oil and a heavy crucifix, their cold weight a small comfort against the encroaching dread. The chapel itself seemed alive. The wooden walls pulsed, dark veins appearing and disappearing within the scorched timber, as if the building itself had a heartbeat. From the high vaulted ceiling, dozens of dolls hung like rotten fruit, their tiny bodies swinging gently in a non-existent breeze, whispering in a sibilant, unified chant. He took a hesitant step forward, his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. A voice sliced through the darkness, a voice he recognized but twisted, layered with a dozen others. It was Clara's voice, the little girl who had been the doll's first victim. "Father, will you confess too?" And there, on the dilapidated altar, the Labubu doll materialized, its body glowing with a malevolent red light. In an instant, every candle in the chapel flared to life with black flames. The dolls hanging from the ceiling dropped, their strings cut. They hit the floor not with a soft thud, but with a skittering sound, crawling toward him like a swarm of grotesque insects. Jonas screamed prayers, holy words that had once banished demons, but they seemed to melt in the air, powerless. One doll, faster than the rest, latched onto his outstretched arm. He felt a sharp, searing pain, and then a horrifying sensation of it crawling inside his skin. Morning light, pale and weak, finally broke over Hollow Creek. The church stood silent, an empty monument to the night's horrors. But the town was no longer empty. The people of Hollow Creek walked the streets, but they were not the same. Everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest man, now wore the same vacant, serene smile. Children laughed, but their voices were hollow, devoid of joy. Men and women moved in a slow, unnatural rhythm, their movements synchronized, whispering the same chilling phrase over and over. She's awake now. The last shot pans slowly through the town, a terrifying tableau of hundreds of people standing motionless in the middle of the street. Their heads are tilted slightly, their empty smiles fixed, and in each and every person's hands, held with reverent care, is a small Labubu doll. At the center of it all, the clock tower, long frozen, begins to move. Its hands tick backward, then forward, until they once again strike 3:07. Time resets. The day will end, the night will fall, and the possession hour will begin again. The sound of whispers fades into harsh static, then silence. A soft, chilling whisper emerges. You can't stop what's already inside you. Thank you for joining us in the dark room. If you crave more tales from the abyss, remember to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. The cursed never rest, and neither do we.